It's time for Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle.
Welcome on into Bringing the Heat with Trey Lyle. My name is Trey Lyle, and we got a fun, jam-packed show for you as Dustin Albino joins us this week for our Friends of Frontstretch series. Had a great conversation with him as he head into the Inferno. Then Caleb Barnes will join me later, talk the latest NASCAR news and notes. Plus, of course, we will dive into the Denny Hamlin versus Bubba Wallace situation, the unique dynamics there as well. But first, great conversation with Dustin about his journey, how he joined Frontstretch, now full-time career with Jayski, and how his dream has always been this, and how he became a fan of Bobby Labonte, and it grew into more. Dustin Albino, now into the Inferno.
Now, it's time for
Dustin Albino, of course. Dustin, it's been a whole 18 hours since I've seen your beautiful face. I miss you already.
To Go Into the Inferno with Trey.
Coming into the Inferno this week, a man who is very familiar to folks here at Frontstretch.com, currently works for Jayski, Dustin Albino. Dustin, thanks so much for doing this. Appreciate the time. Our third Friends of Frontstretch series, as I like to call it. It's been you, John Newby, Davey Siegel, and now you. So glad to have you with us. Let's just dive right into your journey. Starting with you as a fan. A lot of us are just fans of the sport at the heart of it. When was the moment you first remember kind of falling in love with motorsports and NASCAR?
Yeah, so I think I started watching when I was around 3. And then I went to my first race at Watkins Glen. I grew up about an hour and a half, a little less than an hour and a half away from Watkins Glen. And I went to my first race at 4 years old. It was in 2000. Steve Park won, a fellow New Yorker. Granted, he's from Long Island. And I was hooked. And then obviously I was only 4 years old, but it's probably literally the earliest childhood memory that I have. Maybe my parents' wedding, which was a few months before that. But I mean, aside from that, it would be NASCAR. So I was hooked. The overload of sensation, the sensories, the sights, the smell, the taste, the feel, you could everything. So I was hooked from that moment on, and really it just, up until high school, I played sports throughout, elementary, middle school, high school, baseball, football, basketball, but NASCAR was always the thing. And I was that kid in school from a small town that loved NASCAR, and not many other people could relate to that. So this was always a dream of mine to then cover the sport, probably since I was 7 or 8 years old. So thankful that I get to do it full time now.
Yeah, you told me you were a Bobby Labonte fan growing up. So obviously we talked to Davey last week, and basically his dad was a Harvick fan, and that made him a Harvick fan. And he was a pretty big Harvick fan. How did you become a fan of good old Bobby Labonte?
Yeah, so while I bleed orange now, Syracuse orange, green was my favorite color when I was a kid. And so the bright green Interstate Batteries car, number 18, that was what I was drawn to. Bobby, and that too was peak Bobby Labonte years between 1998 and 2003. Obviously the 2000 champion. So it was a good time to kind of follow Bobby while I was getting introduced to the sport. And you obviously had guys like Rusty and Jeff Gordon and Dale Sr. at the time. And Mark Martin, they were all household names. Dale Jarrett, these were all the big guns in the sport. So, Bobby was just my guy. And I got to interview him at my 5th race I ever covered. And that was dream come true, pinch me moment.
So I remember similar interaction, having, even if there was a press junket, interacting with Dale Jr., who was my favorite driver growing up. And I just remember in my head a moment when I was a kid when I met him as those meet and greets they would have in Richmond. My mom surprised me and took me to Macy's in Short Pump, and I couldn't say a word to Dale Jr. I was talking to him. I just remember like that. Were you afraid? That brings me to my question. When you had that moment with Bobby Labonte, how where were your nerves at? Was it 10?
Yeah, I mean, I met him when I was a fan too. I met him, I think, 2 times. The first time he was driving the 32, I think, or no, it probably would have been the 47. It actually might have been the 96, the Ask.com car, when he was kind of bouncing around to a bunch of different rides between like 2010-ish to 2013-ish. And that was peak nerves. But then the first time I interviewed him was in 2016, the first Daytona race I ever covered. He was driving the 18 Xfinity car for Gibbs that weekend. And yeah, that was, I mean, even back then, I would get, I was still young. I'd covered the sport in 2015, but I only went to 4 races. I was in college, so I'm kind of still learning the trade. So yeah, very nervous. But also very cool that I got that opportunity, and very thankful for that.
Yeah, it feels I'm a little bit better at it now than I was when I was a kid. Granted, I was in first grade, so it should be that way. So that leads you. So you mentioned it. You played sports all throughout high school, basketball, football, baseball. So what would you say was your best sport?
Oh, that's a good question. I was an all-star, county all-star for football, an honorable mention for basketball, but I think I was most clutch in baseball. So I got them all covered there. But racing, I never raced, but it was just, like I mentioned earlier, just the sensory overload of it. It just attracted me, and that's what I wanted to do with my life. And we as sports writers could, if the opportunity was there, to cover any sport that we could. And I have done that at the local level, at the college level, radio, print, whatever, but racing was always the thing. So, yeah, I don't know what it is aside from just, it's kind of like a drug. Once you're in there, you're hooked.
Yeah, I think going to a NASCAR race is
Yeah,
peak level. Like, to me, there are a few sports that are actually better in person than the television product. Like, I think baseball falls in that category, and I think NASCAR racing itself, just because you don't get the feel like
for sure.
that of the car, like the true noise of the race car that you compare to what they do on TV. So looking at going through your journey, you mentioned it. You go to Ithaca College in New York, went there for journalism, and you mentioned it was your plan since you were 7 years old. So you just ironically similar to me, I had a similar plan. Was it always wanting to go to Ithaca? Was it like this opportunity kind of fall into your hands? I know you're a big Syracuse fan,
This
and
is where I wanted to go.
It's a pretty hard place to get into.
It's a hard place to get into. I got into it, but financially just made no sense.
Mm-hmm.
Ithaca too, very expensive, but thankfully, through grants and scholarships, I was set for the most part. So yeah, Syracuse was where I wanted to go. It was, growing up, I'm a Big East basketball fan, now ACC, and bleed orange. But Ithaca made logical sense. But even before Ithaca, I went to community college, and I feel like it was at a local community college. I'm from the Auburn, New York area, which is about 35 minutes outside of Syracuse. And there was a lot of hands-on opportunities. So covering basketball, lacrosse, and that's where you kind of get your hands on everything. And just get different opportunities. That was more like digital than print, than writing. That was more when I went to Ithaca. And then you get into the newsroom, the Ithacan, which is an award-winning publication for college newspapers. But yeah, while that's going on, I meet Joseph Volkin, who's another Frontstretch alum. I saw him. I followed him on Twitter. I don't know how I got connected with him. I don't remember that, but he's become one of my best friends over the years. And he was working at the time, writing freelancing for Speedway Digest. So that was my first stop while I was in community college. It was at the end of 2014. That was my start was essentially championship weekend 2014. That was the first, obviously, rendition of the new playoff format that we have, or the current playoff format. And then in 2015, I do a lot of stuff for Speedway Digest. In 2016 at Daytona, that same weekend that I interviewed Bobby, I meet Tom Bowles. And so from then I start as a news writer. Tom's a great guy. Become a news writer. Did news on Fridays, I believe. And then it turned to maybe Thursday. And then it just kind of off to the races from there.
Yeah, that was going to lead to my next question. Is 2016 you join us at Frontstretch.com. So you mentioned it. So you just meet Tom and
yeah,
go from there. What was it like? Getting your foot in the door here at Frontstretch.
Yeah, so Tom, obviously, he gives a lot of people a lot of opportunity. And that's one of the great things about going to Frontstretch is you can really hone in on your craft. And there's no shortage of opportunities. So I meet Tom through Joseph at Daytona that year. And yeah, almost immediately we clicked. I did double duty between Speedway Digest that year and also Frontstretch. And then 2017, I started doing Frontstretch more. Graduate in 2018 in May. And then between 2018 and 2020, through 2020, I'm with Frontstretch, going to the track, representing Frontstretch, was just so cool. And really, that was, Frontstretch does a lot for a lot of people, and I feel like it gets overlooked by a lot of people too, which is, it is what it is in the media landscape these days. But there's been so many people that have gotten their start at Frontstretch, and they just kind of branch off into these different careers, whether it's following that, the racing passion or going elsewhere. And Tom's a great mentor, and he's a good dude to, for all aspects of life. He's just a good friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I do love my boss, Tom Bowles, very much. Please keep me, if you're listening to this. So that leads you ultimately to where you're at today. You're at Jayski full time. Was that I hate using the word serendipitous, but was that a very serendipitous moment for you of being able to do this, as kind of your full-time career? Because, at Frontstretch, it's something, unfortunately, and Tom wishes he could do it, that you can't really do full-time. But ultimately, you got the job with Jayski that allowed you to kind of go into this path full-time.
Yeah, I was investing a lot of money at Frontstretch too. And Tom, he wanted to, hopefully his goal was to bring me on full-time. But unfortunately, that just didn't work out with the way that the funding was back then in terms of how much sponsorship money he could bring in and elsewhere. And now I think it's in a much better spot from talking to Tom and other people at Frontstretch, which is good. I'm glad. And hopefully I helped kind of get it to that point. So yeah, got an email from Scott Page, Phoenix championship weekend of 2020. I'm there for Frontstretch. It was kind of weird because that was obviously during COVID. And
yeah.
So, it might have been 25% the occupancy at Phoenix, if I remember. It might have been 50. I don't remember exactly, but there wasn't many people there. I was stationed in the press box, and I met Scott for the first time virtually. And yeah, I told Tom, I'm like, I need to talk to you Monday, because it was kind of moving quickly, and it was going to start a month and a half later at Jayski if I were to accept the job. Obviously I did. And from there, it just kind of spiraled into, obviously we have a partnership with NASCAR. So I'm doing a lot of stuff for NASCAR.com, the fantasy writer there, doing a lot of Xfinity stuff. They send me to the track too now, which I'm doing a lot of stuff for both sides. And it's exactly what I wanted to do. You have Jayski, which is a very reputable outlet that's been around for 29 years now. We're celebrating our 30th year in August next year. So yeah, it's kind of crazy because I remember back in the day, when I would be in math class in 6th grade, or 7th grade, you go to the computer lab or something, and I would go on Jayski and check out all the paint schemes for the upcoming year or whatever it might be. And to now be, working for them, uploading those paint schemes, just full circle moment.
So I asked Davey and I asked John this, and I think you kind of hinted at maybe the pinch me moment, but everyone talks about if you talk to an NFL player, the welcome to the NFL moment. What was your welcome to NASCAR moment? Was it the interview with Bobby Labonte, or was there a moment before that where you're like, oh my God, I'm doing this?
That's a good question. Yeah, that one was a good one. My 7th race I ever covered, I have this running document of how many races I've been to, who's won, who won the pole, the most laps led, whatever. It's a nerdy kind of NASCAR thing that I have.
Shout out to Steven Stomp. I feel like that'd be something Steven has.
Probably. But I'm at 151 right now. So this would have been my 7th race that I covered, and it was at Pocono in 2016. I say 7. It was the 7th I covered, but it was probably 30th on the list because I documented ones I went to as a fan as well. But I got to interview Dale Jr. one-on-one, and that was whoa, I'd been asking for, at that time I'm a nobody, right? I'm just some kid that goes to college and is doing this part-time, hoping he gets a chance. And And Dal gave me I think it was like 12 minutes, which was great back then. This was right before his concussion because he sat out the second half of the 2016 season.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that I would always have this internal goal too of going to the track whenever I would cover races. I'd try to get a ton of interviews with obviously a bunch of different angles, and I would try to at least get one driver from one of the bigger teams. Because at that point, you're getting in front of the driver, but you're also getting in front of the PR reps and you're making connections. And that was something I did probably from 2015. Like even with Ryan Newman, I interviewed him that year, which was pretty cool. And he's very, I would say picky's probably a right word with Ryan. Like he's a great interviewer, but like he can get on, like he's very blunt, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that, I don't know. And then there's, other times where you have run-ins with drivers where maybe they're blunt to you and it just, you thought an interview was going to go one way and it goes the other way, or you ask a question in the media center and it's not a good question. So I would say the pinch me moment was probably, hell, it might've been the time I just went to my first race at Pocono as a media member in 2015, because you're pulling into the tunnel. I'd done that as a fan, and now you're doing it as a media member, and you got to represent yourself. This is something that you've wanted to do your whole life, and you hope to do for your career at the time. So I don't have one. I wish I could give you one, but there's a bunch that just, even today, like, last week I had an interview with Jeff Gordon. That was the first time I got to interview him one-on-one for a story, and that was just so cool. So yeah, they're still happening, but I wouldn't be here without Frontstretch for sure from back in the day.
Ultimately, what would you say is your goal? Like what is your goal as you can continue to grow? Is it just to keep doing what you're doing? Is it to, maybe write a book one day? Is it, what would you say is like maybe the pinnacle goal for you?
Yeah, I'm definitely living my dream right now in terms of just, being present at the tracks, having a face at the track, working for the company that I want to work for. I have thought about maybe a book in the future. I don't know what it would be on or who it would be with. Maybe it's like
The Tortures of Michael Massey and Brian Nolan. I've considered that.
Yeah, you could call off of that. But yeah, that would be cool. Maybe one day in the future. I'm still relatively young. Even though I've been here for over a decade now. Like, that's the craziest thing, is time just flies when you're in the sport. So yeah, we'll have to see. I don't have a set goal for that, but as long as I'm with NASCAR, like I'm cool. As long as I'm in the sport. At
Dustin Albino on Twitter. Dustin, I appreciate the time, man. This was a very fun conversation, and we'll see each other at the track before we know it.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the opportunity. Always good talking to you. And like I said, Frontstretch has done so much for me in my career, so I appreciate it.
That was Dustin Albino in the Inferno. Thanks so much to Dustin for joining us and giving me some time to talk about his journey and his time at Frontstretch, as well as his time at Jayski, and maybe that possible book that could come out. And I would be glad to help him if he did want to write about the tortures of Michael Massey and Brian Nolan. But let's get back to the NASCAR with what's still hot.
What's still hot? It's time to upgrade you on the latest news in NASCAR.
Joining me now is at Caleb Barnes _ Caleb Barnes. Of course, helps me produce Bringing the Heat as well as co-host most weeks. Caleb, glad to have you with me. But Adam Stern reporting that NASCAR has developed a Back to Roots marketing campaign that has the tagline, "Hell yeah!" Shout out to Steve Austin. Per people familiar, as the racing series prepares for branding efforts for the 2026 season, it seems like a lot of these branding efforts are going back to its roots. Does that have an indication of what future plans may bring? What do you think?
Yeah, it was something that they had talked about, was wanting to get back to their roots, whatever that means. And I'll be honest, it's not my favorite idea or tactic. I know a lot of the thoughts is that just as we continue to see this decline of viewership and and fandom and things like that. Is a lot of the idea is, well, you're having some of your typical fans who are turning around and leaving the sport. And I don't know that a marketing campaign is going to do it, especially not this one. And there's a part of me that's kind of worried because, like, the idea of going back to the roots of NASCAR almost makes you think in some ways of them maybe abandoning some of their newer markets and trying to get back to being centralized in the southern areas, southern and east coast. But at the same time, I can see a line of thinking of, like, I mean, rather than trying to spread yourself thin and go all over the place and get little new pockets of fans here and there, why not go back to a stronghold and try to build that up and then try to return to form of expanding back into some of those places. So I guess we'll see how this goes. It just seems like it seems like it's not. It might be like a bit of a last second effort to try and quickly turn things around without having to make any major changes through any sort of car fixtures or fixing the points format or any of that thing. It seems like maybe trying to go after that through a marketing campaign. And I do agree that the sports marketing can have a big impact on the way that it's perceived. I just don't know if this is the way that I would have gone about it. But then again, I'm not the one getting paid by NASCAR to come up with a marketing campaign. So I guess we'll see how it all turns out for him, if this is indeed the tagline, the way that they seem to be going with that.
Yeah, other news and notes from NASCAR is Carson Hocevar fined $50,000 for apparently revving and spinning his tires while safety workers were attached to his car late in the race when he spun on lap 260. After seeing the replay, I really didn't see it. There could be a more definitive replay. Obviously, the in-car camera maybe gets a better angle at this. Any really reaction to this, or just kind of be like, you got to be smart around safety workers?
It's a little bit of that. It's another one of these examples where you kind of wonder if it was any other driver, would they have gotten that same reaction? Because I feel like we've seen plenty of times before when cars are stuck, whenever they've been high-sided on the underbody and the tires, there's not a ton of, they're just stuck on the rims, they're spinning the tires, can't move. I feel like we've seen plenty of times before where drivers are still trying to mash the gas and get their cars to go. And then again, I don't know what they consider like the vicinity of the safety workers to be unsafe, but I was at that fall Talladega race last year when there was like 20 cars sitting over there in turns 3 and 4, and they were all spinning tires, throwing stuff around while there were safety workers trying to get to these cars. And I feel like that was a similar situation for a number of drivers and safety workers. Then again, like I said, I don't know what the exact vicinity is that NASCAR considers to be unsafe. Like, I don't know if these other drivers have been pretty good about once a worker actually gets to the car, then they stop trying to spin their tires. But it could just be a thing too where Carson Hocevar, he's had so many of these disciplinary kind of penalties and people look so closely at everything that he does that maybe NASCAR's like, oh, well, this is a guy we can easily make an example out of without too much pushback or something like that. So it wouldn't surprise me one way or the other. I don't recall this penalty being issued to anybody else recently as far as like safety workers go. I know Ty Gibbs has had some of these like safety infringement penalties and fines, but that was for some shenanigans on pit road. I think the same for Joey Logano was for like post-race pit road stuff. But as far as like safety workers at the car, I don't recall it, but it could be a thing to look out for in the future for other drivers to see if they do or don't get a penalty.
Looking at another headline, and by the way, I completely agree with that assessment. Not really shocking news. It's just it's interesting. Randall Burnett is no longer the crew chief for Kyle Busch for the rest of this season. Andy Street will replace him. It was a mutual decision. RCR came out on Wednesday when we're recording to state that. Again, it feels like this is not shocking news considering he is leaving for Trackhouse. He just Street was the crew chief for when Jesse Love and Austin Hill made their Cup starts for RCR this year. It just feels like kind of like, let's just rip the Band-Aid off now. Kyle Busch is underperformed this season anyways. Like, this was going to be probably a mutual parting ways no matter what. Let's just everyone can kind of get this breakup over sooner.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like for Kyle Busch and that team, how much worse is it going to get? Now, if they go out and like crash first lap every week, then You can point it at me. It was my fault. But at this point, you're just really thinking like, man, I mean, how much worse can they do? And for Randall, maybe would be a little bit surprised on his end of things to be willing to step away. And like, you wonder if he would get worried about missing a couple races, if that might affect his ability. Although, I mean, it's just a few races. So highly doubt it would cause too much rust to develop over the next couple of weeks. But yeah, as far as the rest of the team, for even the new crew chief stepping in, Andy, you could look at that as maybe a tryout for him to see if that could be a potential fit and to see if they could turn around some of the results on the 8 team to look towards next year. Or, I mean, you at least have another person who works on that team and could help in the hiring process. There's a lot of benefits that come along with switching crew chiefs and having Randall walk away here, mutual agreements, and still kind of helping out behind the scenes to where he's able to still give some of his knowledge. But ultimately, I think it's best for both of these teams. And who knows, maybe it can help just even the slightest to have something turn around for that team, because it's just been a no good, horrible, very bad season for the 8 team.
Looking at that, someone who had a hopeful that was going to get into victory lane on Sunday was Bubba Wallace. Unfortunately, he falls a few feet short, getting taken out or by his own car owner. His reaction post-race is our focus of the soundbite of the week.
Well, Tony, what angered you at the end of the race? What did you take issue with?
What the hell do you think I was mad about? Dumb little runs us clear down to the infield. He wants to about everybody else, and he's the one that drives like a little. I'm going to bust his ass.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
And short track races.
It's time for the soundbites of the week.
Bubba, did it feel like he moved you? Well, you guys seen it. It's unfortunate. I was excited to race Denny for the win, and hell, we ended up 5th and gave the 9 a win. So that's what's frustrating the most, is that we couldn't get Toyota to victory lane. We've been working really hard to get our program back here at Kansas. We still got a lot of work to do. Played all of our cards right, and just wasn't meant to be.
Will there be a conversation with Denny about this?
Can't talk to him.
You're going to race him any differently, potentially, since it's how he raced you?
I mean, I've always been big on you race me. How you race me is how I race you. No matter who you are, what it is, we race hard. We race hard every week. Toyota drivers race really hard every week, but we respect each other. And there's a fine line that sometimes gets crossed, and you have to understand that. But we got one more race at the Roval. For me, it's a must-win there, right? But we're going to go and do what we did today, fight hard, and just make the most of it.
It was an adversity-filled day, so what was the mindset like, just taking it stint by stint all day long?
Yeah, just staying with it. Every stint that went by, my smile got bigger and bigger because we were getting back up to the front, and it was nice to see everybody sticking together. Intensity ramps up, the emotions ramp up, and I'm vocal. Like, we need to fix our car immediately, and they kept their heads down, gave me the appropriate adjustments, and we made it work, and we had a shot for the win.
Are you good with the way everything was raced at the end?
I mean, I finished 5th, Bob, going for the win, so no, but...
I mean, do you feel like anybody did anything uncouth, or is that just overtime finish here in Kansas?
Yeah, no, Bob. You're searching for an answer. You know what it is.
But do you at least feel good now to get the monkey off the back here, considering the struggles last 2-3 years? I know I asked you that to start.
Yeah, a little bit, but we're still playing second fiddle to JGR, so hats off to them. We really got to...
Well, there's his reaction post-race. Bubba Wallace, I think it showed his maturity both in his post-race interview on TV and then what he kind of admitted to it. He did get caught giving the one finger salute to his boss, which his boss said that was okay by me. Obviously, this is the first time Denny Hamlin has been in this kind of situation, it felt like, since he's become the owner of 2311. Not that it's been like a 1-2 and they're racing for the win, but where Denny makes a mistake that ultimately cost Toyota the win, but cost 2311 probably a chance at advancing in the next round unless something crazy can happen at the Roval. Ultimately, post-race and since the event, do you think all parties have handled it okay, where Bubba's kind of just been like, it is what it is, like, he did what I thought he did what was wrong. It just feels like he hasn't said or done anything egregious since.
I think for the most part, I think what's going to maybe sting a little bit more is Denny continuing to defend his actions. But I think going forward, they'll have a mutual understanding of going for the win and everything. And I really think that both Bubba and Denny share the same mindset of the worst part is that they gave the win away to a Chevrolet as a Toyota team, as Toyota, who's pretty much dominated all but one of these playoff races so far. And I mean, I echo your comments about I thought that was very mature, Bubba Wallace. I think years past he would have been out and been either very hard on himself or very harsh towards others. And instead, he was more taking away the positives from it, even though he was still upset, rightfully so, that he kind of got taken out. I think there's a little bit to be said too about maybe the way that Bubba raced Bell and kind of forcing the 20 high a little bit, and maybe Denny saw that. Maybe they talk about that, and that kind of encouraged Denny to use up more of the racetrack on his own side of things. But I think at the end of the day, they will come to an understanding, and really, yeah, and really, if anything, I think I mean Bubba's just going to look at it like, hey, Denny's got just a couple years left. He's already talked about this next contract is more than likely going to be his last. So I think you're well, he's going for 60. You got to kind of understand that side of it as well, that Denny's been very vocal about the win number that he wants to hit. And so I think you look at it that way, kind of maybe if you're really angry about it, start counting down the days or the races or something like that. But yeah, it was a great interview by him to come out and just kind of share his perspective without being too harsh or angry or upset about it. And just sucks for them that Toyota gave away the win after they dominated pretty much the whole race.
Another part, Denny obviously didn't have power steering. Could that have led to, honestly, what was a mistake? Denny sent it in there trying to win the race. They make contact, and then ultimately the bigger mistake is letting Chase Elliott win. But let's get to that with our final thoughts.
It's going to be a drag race all the way back to the start-finish line. No caution. They're side by side, right to the line. Big crash. Here they come. Checkered flag.
The checkered flag is out, and it's time for the final thoughts.
Final thoughts. Anything you want to rant, rave, or review about? Caleb Barnes, the floor is yours.
This one might be a slightly unpopular opinion, but I hope that going forward in the future, no matter what schedule changes are made, I hope the Charlotte Roval has a place in either some sort of a rotation or on the NASCAR schedule. I think it's really great, A, having a road course in the playoffs, but B, just that track. I know people talk about it being a Frankenstein and a monster, and they talk about that in a bad way, but I think it's a uniquely NASCAR Frankenstein and monster, if that makes sense. I think it's a really cool one of the cooler initiatives. I know there's been some good things and bad things done by SMI at a variety of their racetracks, but I thought all four of the races before the Neshing car were incredible, and I just think that the way this car races on road courses versus the mile and a half has led to people kind of turning their opinion on or against the Roval. But I think in the future, if/when NASCAR ever gets this car figured out on short tracks and road courses, I think the Roval could have a permanent place on the schedule. I just don't know that it's there right now with this current car, but I love the Roval. I'm excited we're going there this weekend. I love all the things they do with the pink window nets and all the pink paint schemes. There's a lot of cars with foundation and also charity work going on this weekend. So I love the Roval, everything it stands for. That's what I wanted to get on my pedestal and talk about today.
And I'm going to talk about how I disagree. This race should be at the Oval. It's just, I think they're shooting themselves in the foot by getting rid of one of their best tracks. I think the Charlotte Oval with this car in particular is just one of their better tracks, and you're getting rid, in a time where ratings are an issue, which is a bigger picture. There's a lot of big picture issues going on with NASCAR, and you could throw, NASCAR's not able to talk about the drivers themselves. The conversation always is the format and the car and everything. It just, I just say go back to the Oval, KISS, keep it simple, stupid. Go back to the Oval. Well,
but would you, in future years, if they go back to a raceable car on the road courses, would you be willing to see the Roval come back?
No, go back to the Oval.
Boo.
Go to an actual road course. That's where I sit. All right, Caleb. Anything you want to plug before we get on out of here?
I will plug. I'm planning on writing the lawsuit recap article again this weekend, and then I would like to plug my day job, work at a news station, and last week had the opportunity to go to Valvoline, sponsor for Hendrick Motorsports, because they're doing a cool initiative with Blood Cancer United, and had some kids help add some drawings to their paint scheme this weekend with William Byron in the 24 car. So I got to interview him, but the cool part is I got to talk to one of the artists who has her drawing on the side of the race car. Her name's Penelope. I got to hear her story and share that. So if you'd like to check that out, it's also at my Twitter X at Caleb Barnes _. It was a pretty fun story to get to do. And I'd encourage you to go check it out if you got the time.
There you have it. As for me, check out the Stock Car Scoop. Check out Through the Gears with our guy Wyatt Watson, betting preview of the weekend. And that will do it for us. For Caleb, thanks so much to Dustin for joining us. I'm Trey Lyle, signing off for now on this episode of Bringing Heat.